Why avoidance will always ghost you. How many of you have ever been in a situation where someone you cared about just disappeared? No call, no text, no explanation, just poof, gone. It feels like rejection, doesn't it? But I'm here to tell you it's not about you. It's about them. See, people with avoidant tendencies aren't bad people. They're not evil masterminds plotting to break your heart. They're running an old program, one designed to protect them. Their survival mechanism isn't connection, it's distance. And unless you recognize that, you'll stay stuck in a cycle of frustration, chasing something that was never meant to be yours. When someone ghosts you, it's easy to take it personally. Your mind starts racing with questions. What did I do wrong? Was I too much? Not enough? But the truth is, ghosting has nothing to do with you. It's a reflection of the avoidant's internal world, not your worth or desirability. Avoidants operate from a core belief that intimacy equals danger. This belief isn't something they consciously decide. It's programmed into them, often from childhood experiences. Maybe they grew up in a home where expressing emotions led to rejection or punishment. Maybe their caregivers were emotionally unavailable, teaching them, even unintentionally, that vulnerability leads to pain. So they develop a defense mechanism when relationships start to feel too close, too real, or too emotionally charged. They pull away. Their instinct isn't to communicate their discomfort, it's to disappear. Because to an avoidant, discussing emotions feels like walking into a burning building. Their nervous system perceives intimacy as a threat, and just like someone touching a hot stove, they recoil. It's not rational, it's not about you, it's about their wiring. Now, this doesn't mean they don't care about you. In fact, many avoidants do experience strong feelings, but they lack the tools to process them in a healthy way. Rather than face emotional discomfort, they choose the path that feels safest. Avoidance. That's why they might seem deeply invested in you one moment and gone the next. It's not inconsistency, it's self-protection. You might have noticed that avoidants tend to disappear right when things start getting good. The relationship is deepening, you're connecting, and then boom, they vanish. That's because to them, getting close means losing control. They've spent their whole lives learning to rely on themselves, and the thought of depending on someone else, even emotionally, can feel suffocating. One of the biggest mistakes people make when dealing with an avoidant is assuming that their distance is an invitation to chase. You send another text, you try to win them back, you think if you just prove how much you care, they'll stay. But this only pushes them further away. Why? Because pursuit feels like pressure. And the more pressure they feel, the more their instinct tells them to run. This is why understanding the psychology behind ghosting is so important. You recognize that an avoidance behavior is rooted in their own fear, not your inadequacy. You stop personalizing it. You stop making their withdrawal mean something about your worth. Instead of internalizing rejection, you see it for what it is, an old survival strategy that has nothing to do with you. That shift in perspective is powerful because when you stop personalizing ghosting, you take your power back. You stop engaging in the exhausting cycle of trying to win someone who was never emotionally available to begin with. You realize that love isn't about proving yourself to someone who's running. It's about being with someone who's willing to stay. Avoidance ghosts not because you weren't good enough, but because emotional closeness is overwhelming for them. And that's their battle, not yours. When someone ghosts you, the first instinct is to question yourself. Thoughts start swirling in your mind. Was it something you said, something you did, or something you didn't do? The silence feels personal, like a rejection of who you are at your core. But the truth is, ghosting isn't about you. It's about the person who disappeared and their inability to navigate emotional closeness. It's a reflection of their internal struggles, not your worth. Avoidant individuals operate under a deeply ingrained belief that intimacy is threatening. This belief doesn't form overnight. It's often developed over years, rooted in childhood experiences where closeness wasn't safe. Maybe they grew up with emotionally distant caregivers who didn't respond to their needs. Maybe they were raised in an environment where vulnerability was met with dismissal or punishment. Over time, they learned that relying on others or expressing emotions led to pain, so they built a defense mechanism, emotional distance. This pattern becomes their default way of operating in relationships. When they sense closeness, their subconscious mind rings alarm bells, signaling that they need to protect themselves by pulling away. Their instinct to disappear isn't about malicious intent, it's about survival. To an avoidant, deep emotional connection can feel like a loss of control, and control is how they maintain a sense of security. When someone gets too close, their nervous system perceives it as a threat, triggering a fight or flight response. Some avoidants may create conflict to push the other person away, while others choose the easiest and most passive route, vanishing without a trace. The absence of communication isn't meant to hurt you, even though it does. It's simply the only way they know how to cope with emotions they aren't equipped to.
Avoidants don't ghost because they don't care, and they don't ghost because you did something wrong. They ghost because their nervous system is wired to see emotional closeness as a threat. This isn't a logical decision they sit down and make. It's a deeply ingrained survival mechanism that kicks in automatically. The moment they sense a relationship deepening, their internal alarms go off, telling them it's time to create distance. For many avoidants, this pattern started early in life. Maybe they grew up in an environment where their emotional needs were ignored or dismissed. Maybe they were taught that vulnerability was a weakness, that love was conditional, or that relying on others only led to disappointment. Over time, they learned to associate closeness with pain or loss of control, so they developed a defense strategy, staying emotionally distant. This strategy kept them safe as children, but as adults, it sabotages their relationships. When an avoidant starts feeling connected to someone, their nervous system interprets it as a risk. Their body reacts as if they're in actual danger. Heart rate increases, anxiety kicks in, and the brain goes into overdrive trying to figure out how to escape the situation. This isn't happening on a conscious level. It's an automatic response. Some avoidants might pick a fight to create distance, others might slowly withdraw, and some will choose the path of least resistance, disappearing completely. Ghosting is simply an expression of their flight response, a way to regain the sense of control they feel slipping away. This is why ghosting often happens at the moment when things seem to be going well. You might have had a great conversation, shared a meaningful moment, or felt a deep emotional connection, only to have them suddenly pull away. It doesn't make sense from a rational perspective, but to an avoidant, that moment of closeness can feel suffocating. The more they care, the more vulnerable they feel. The more vulnerable they feel, the more their nervous system urges them to escape. It's not that they don't want love, it's that love feels too overwhelming to handle. The avoidance reaction to intimacy is not a reflection of the other person's worth, but it can be deeply confusing and painful for the person left behind. The sudden disappearance feels personal, like a silent message that says, "You're not enough," or "You did something wrong." But in reality, it has nothing to do with the person being ghosted and everything to do with the avoidant's inability to regulate their emotions in close relationships. What makes this pattern even more complicated is that avoidants often feel guilty after ghosting. They may miss the person they left behind, think about them often, and even feel a pull to reconnect. But the same fear that caused them to leave in the first place stops them from reaching out. They worry that coming back will reopen the emotional intensity they were trying to escape. So rather than face the discomfort, they stay silent, leaving the other person in a state of confusion and unanswered questions. Understanding that avoidants ghost because their nervous system perceives closeness as a threat helps to reframe the experience. It's not about rejection, it's about their internal wiring. Recognizing this allows you to stop taking it personally, detach from the pain of their disappearance, and see it for what it is, a pattern that has nothing to do with your value or lovability. One of the most painful and frustrating experiences in relationships is dealing with someone who constantly pulls away, disappears, or shuts down emotionally. When this happens, the natural instinct for many people is to try harder, to prove their worth, to chase the person pulling away, or to analyze every detail to figure out what went wrong. This reaction is completely understandable, but it's also one of the biggest mistakes you can make when dealing with an avoidant. The harder you try to get closer, the more they will withdraw. The more you chase, the faster they will run. Avoidants don't respond to emotional pressure the way securely attached people do. In a healthy relationship, when one person expresses a need for connection, the other person naturally reciprocates, creating a sense of safety and stability. But for an avoidant, closeness can feel suffocating. The moment they sense that someone wants more from them, more communication, more commitment, more emotional vulnerability, they instinctively retreat. It's not because they don't care, and it's not because they don't feel anything. It's because deep down they associate intimacy with loss of control or even pain. Chasing an avoidant is like trying to hold onto a handful of sand. The tighter you grip, the faster it slips through your fingers. Every time you send that extra text asking for an explanation, every time you try to convince them that they're safe with you, every time you attempt to bring them back into the relationship by proving your love, you're reinforcing their deepest fear, that relationships are overwhelming and that their freedom is at risk. The irony is that the more you try to fix the connection, the more certain they become that they need to get away. A common pattern with avoidance is the push-pull dynamic. They may be drawn to emotional connection at first, even enjoying the closeness, But the moment it starts to feel too real, they begin pulling away. This leaves the other person confused, wondering what changed. This cycle can be incredibly damaging because it keeps you stuck in a loop of hope and disappointment, believing that if you just say the right thing, give them enough space, or prove how much you care, they'll come back and finally stay. But that's not how it works. The only way to deal with an avoidant is to stop chasing them. This doesn't mean playing games or trying to make them jealous. It means genuinely understanding that their emotional unavailability is their issue, not something you can fix. When someone pulls away, the healthiest response is to let them go. If they truly want to be in your life, they will come back on their own terms. And if they don't, then they were never capable of giving you what you needed in the first place. Emotionally available people don't need to be convinced to stay. They don't need to be chased, and they don't leave you in a state of confusion. The sooner you recognize this, the sooner you stop wasting your energy trying to win over someone who is fundamentally unable to meet you where you are. Real love isn't about proving your worth to someone who is running. It's about finding someone who is willing to stand still with you. When you stop chasing, you regain your power. You shift from feeling rejected to understanding that the right relationship won't require you to fight for basic emotional security. You start to realize that love should feel safe, consistent, and mutual, not like an endless struggle to hold on to someone who is always slipping away. The right people won't need convincing. They won't leave you questioning your worth, wondering where you stand, or feeling like you have to prove yourself to be loved. When someone is truly ready for a healthy relationship, they meet you where you are. They communicate, they show up, and they make it clear that they want to be in your life. You don't have to chase them, beg for their attention, or constantly analyze their actions to figure out how they feel. One of the biggest traps people fall into when dealing with avoidance is believing that if they just do something differently, the avoidant will finally stay. Maybe if they text less, act cooler, don't bring up emotions, or try harder to be perfect, then the avoidant will feel safe enough to commit. But the truth is, no amount of adjusting yourself will make an emotionally unavailable person suddenly become available. Their avoidance isn't about you, it's about them. And the right person, the one who is truly available, will never put you in a position where you feel like you have to earn their love. When someone is right for you, you won't feel like you're walking on eggshells. You won't constantly be second-guessing if you said or did something wrong to make them pull away. You won't feel anxious every time you send a message, wondering if they'll respond or if they'll disappear again. The right person makes their intentions clear. They create safety in the relationship, not confusion. A healthy relationship is built on mutual effort. It's not one person doing all the work while the other resists or withdraws. When two people are emotionally available, they both invest in the connection. They both communicate. They both take responsibility for the relationship. If you find yourself constantly trying to figure out what you need to do to make someone stay, that's a sign that the relationship is unbalanced and it's not your job to fix it. This doesn't mean that avoidants are bad people. They're not intentionally trying to hurt anyone. In fact, many of them don't even fully understand their own behavior. But the reality is, if someone isn't willing to work through their emotional barriers, there's nothing you can do to change them. You can't love someone into being ready. You can't heal them by sacrificing your own emotional needs. The most empowering decision you can make is to stop focusing on whether an avoidant will ever change and start asking yourself what you need. Do you want a relationship where you're constantly anxious, waiting for someone to pull away? Or do you want a relationship where you feel safe, valued, and secure? The answer is obvious, but actually making the shift requires you to believe that you deserve more than inconsistency. When you internalize the belief that you are worthy of love without having to fight for it, your entire perspective changes. You stop trying to convince unavailable people to stay. You stop investing in relationships that drain you. You stop chasing after someone who isn't meeting you halfway. Instead, you start attracting people who are emotionally open, who want the same things you do, and who are capable of building a relationship with real depth and stability. The right person doesn't make you question whether they care. They show you. Through their words, their actions, and their consistency, they make it clear that they value you. And when you experience that kind of love, you'll realize that all the time and energy you spent trying to make the wrong people stay was never worth it. Because real love, the kind that lasts, has never been about proving yourself. It has always been about mutual effort, emotional availability, and a connection that doesn't require you to chase. Every rejection you experience in life, no matter how painful, is actually a form of redirect. It might not feel that way in the moment, especially when someone you care about ghosts you or pulls away without explanation. It feels personal, like a reflection of your worth, leaving you with questions that have no answers. But the truth is, when someone walks out of your life, they are doing you a favor. They are showing you in the clearest way possible that they were never capable of giving you the love and security you deserve. It's easy to dwell on the loss, to wonder what you could have done differently, or to romanticize the moments that made you feel special. But if someone truly valued you, they wouldn't have left. Love isn't about being perfect enough to make someone stay. It's about two people who choose each other every day, no matter what. If someone chose to walk away, that means they weren't meant for you. And when you hold on to someone who isn't meant for you, you close yourself off to the person who is.
Rejection can be painful, but it is also one of life's greatest teachers. It forces you to look at your patterns, to recognize the kind of relationships you've been accepting, and to ask yourself if you're truly choosing partners who align with what you want and deserve. If you keep finding yourself drawn to emotionally unavailable people, it's an opportunity to step back and ask why. What are you hoping to prove? What wounds are you trying to heal through someone else? The lesson in rejection is never about trying harder to keep someone who doesn't want to stay. It's about learning to choose yourself and stop settling for less than you deserve. Every time someone ghosts you, they are making room for someone better. It might not feel like it right away, especially if you had strong feelings for them, but one day you will look back and see it clearly. You will realize that their leaving was necessary to create space for the kind of love that doesn't make you question yourself. The love that doesn't disappear when things get real. The love that is mutual, steady, and secure. But you won't find that love if you keep holding on to the ones who keep slipping away. When you experience rejection, you have two choices. You can let it define you, or you can let it refine you. You can take it as a sign that you're unlovable, or you can take it as a sign that you were never meant to be in that situation in the first place. The way you interpret rejection will determine how you move forward. If you see it as a failure, you will continue chasing after people who don't value you, hoping to prove yourself. But if you see it as redirection, you will start to trust that what is meant for you will never require you to beg, to chase, or to suffer. When you finally embrace this mindset, everything changes. You stop trying to convince unavailable people to stay. You stop mourning relationships that were never truly healthy. You stop believing that love is something you have to fight for. Instead, you start welcoming people who actually show up for you, people who communicate, who respect you, and are capable of real emotional intimacy, because that is what you deserve. And the moment you believe that, truly believe it, you will never tolerate anything less again. At the end of the day, love should never leave you feeling anxious, confused, or unworthy. The right person will never make you question where you stand, nor will they disappear the moment things start getting real. When someone ghosts you, when they pull away without explanation, they are showing you exactly who they are and what they are capable of giving. And that is a gift. Because once you see the truth, you stop chasing illusions. You stop settling for inconsistency. You stop believing that love requires you to prove yourself. Rejection isn't the end, it's redirection. Every time someone walks away, you are being guided towards something better, towards someone who will meet you at the same level of love, commitment, and emotional presence that you are willing to give. But you must be willing to let go of the wrong people to make space for the right ones. You deserve a love that stays, a love that communicates, a love that feels safe, consistent, and reciprocal. And that kind of love is not something you have to beg for. It's something that meets you with open arms, without hesitation, without games, and without fear. Thank you for taking the time to listen, for opening your heart to these words, and for choosing to invest in yourself. Growth begins the moment you realize that love is not something you chase, it's something that is freely given. My hope is that you walk away from this knowing your worth, standing in your power, and never again settling for anything less than the love you truly deserve. Thank you, and I wish you nothing but strength, clarity, and the kind of love that never leaves you questioning